Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to pick up where we left off on our discussion from chapter 5 and chapter 6 of the Basic of Biblical Greek, Mouse's book here. And we went through chapter 5, how English nouns work. English has some degree of inflection. Inflection is how a word changes based on how it's used. A word might change based on how it's used in a sentence, right? And so it would have a case, and English has a subjective case, a possessive case, an objective case, and we talked about how that is structured syntactically in the sentence, structured by word order. Subject precedes the verb, and then the object of the verb, the object that's receiving the action of the verb, comes afterwards. And we talked about, so there's a subjective case, a possessive case, possession, and objective case in English. We talked about how there's an inflection just with the number, the singular or plural. We talked about how there's inflection associated with gender, masculine, feminine, and neuter. And we're talking about grammatical gender, not natural gender. And we also talked about declension. Declension is a pattern of inflection, and we'll see that much greater as in languages where they're highly inflected, such as the Greek. English is not nearly as inflected. And we talked about the various parts of speech and a noun, the word that stands for something or someone, a person, place, or thing, or concept, a verb, typically an action related, or whether it's active or passive, but also a state of being, is or was. The adjective that modifies a noun, a preposition. Preposition is about relationships between two nouns or between various nouns, like being in the house. The subject, the verb, the subject is what's doing the action associated with the verb, and the predicate would be the verb, and the rest of the sentence would be referred to as the predicate, and it becomes important, especially when we start looking at what's referred to as predicate nominative, which we did touch on a little bit in the Greek. And then the definite article, English has both a definite article and an indefinite article. The definite article is the, it makes something definite. The Christ, the church, versus indefinite. It's not a Christ or a church, it's definite. And indefinite will be something that is not unique or definite, but is indefinite. Okay. And we looked at the example of, in English, Bill threw the large rock into a pond. Bill being the subject, throwing through the action of the verb. What did he throw? He threw the rock. What kind of rock? Well, it was a large rock. Well, it wasn't just a large rock. It was the large rock. And he threw it where? Into a pond. And so we have prepositional phrase modifying the rock being thrown into a pond. And so we looked at that. And we kind of did a quick overview just for introductory purposes of John 1 verse 1 in our halagos, that is the in the beginning was the word. So we see a prepositional phrase in the beginning was a stative verb, and halagos, and we talked about how halagos appears 3 times in this verse. And this the definite article ha and logos both are in a subjective case. In Greek, we refer to it as the nominative case, functioning as the subject. And then kai, the and word that you've learned from the last chapter. And we looked a little bit at kai, theos, hein, halagos, and would be literally, would be translated as the word, and the word was God. But that's another level. So I want to go today, pick up into finish where we left off in chapter 6. And let me kind of make sure, let me open this up and make sure this is fully viewed. Go to a full view here, I think. I'm current. Oh, no, wait, back up. Don't do that. Stop. Okay, let me go. Slideshow from current. Okay, this is where we left off, and we talked about, we're into the Greek case endings. And I did think it was better just go and record this because we're behind, and let you view this at your own leisure, and then we can answer questions the next time we get together. Well, we talked about how in the Greek, the word apostolos, meaning apostle or messenger, has a, well, we looked, when we go back up, we looked at how in all words, in any language really, you have a root word, and the root then would be added to that root, normally in this case a connecting vowel, which would make it the stem, and the stem produces these various flowers, and that is the same thing that occurs in the Greek, where we have, let me see if I can write on here, okay, all right. So we have here the root, right, R-O-O-T, and its stem generally is the root plus a connecting vowel, we'll just say CV for connecting vowel, plus these leaves or flowers, whatever you want to look at, and these become the cases, right? In English is the subjective case, the objective case, and the possessive case. In Greek, there are really 5 cases. There's the nominative case, the genitive case, the dative case, the accusative case, and the vocative. Now, I mentioned the vocative case, and you see how for nouns are 28,956 nouns across those 5 cases. In the article being the, Greek has a definite article. It does not have an indefinite article. It only has the definite article. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the article. But the articles, it would be, there's what, over almost 20,000 pronouns under various cases: nominative case, genitive, dative, accusative, vocative, although not really vocative, and the adjectives and participles, all noun participles are noun verb combination, or adjective really verb combination, and we'll get more into that. But there are 5 cases, and the 4 dominant ones that we're going to focus on are the subjective one, which was referred to as the nominative, the possessive one, which is referred to as the genitive, the dative one, which functions as the indirect object, and the accusative, which is the objective case. The direct address we talked about: Samuel, go look after Silas. Well, when I say Samuel, it's a direct address. I'm not talking to anyone else. I'm talking to Samuel. That's a direct address. And so all nouns, adjective, pronouns, participles come into one of these 5 cases. And what we're going to focus on, though, is predominantly the 4, the subjective, which is referred to as the nominative. It appears 31% of the times for nouns. 31% of the time it appears is in the nominative case, the subjective, meaning it functions as the subject. The direct object, the objective case, appears 29% of the time for nouns, and we refer to that as the accusative, or in the Greek it's referred to as the accusative case, and it's functioning objectively as a direct object. And then we also, again, we're going to do these 2 today in chapter 6, and these other 2 in chapter 7, European 7, in chapter 6. The other 2 is the possessive case. So like in English, we have a subjective case, an objective case, and a possessive case. In Greek, we call this possessive case the genitive, and 25% of nouns function in the possessive or the genitive case. And then, of course, the dative case is really functioning as the indirect object. 15% of the nouns function in the dative or as the indirect object. Indirect object would be Silas. Silas broke his toy. Indirect object broke his. Let's see, I'm trying to do it without a preposition. I didn't think through this before I tried to record it. Okay, so Silas broke his favorite toy would be an adjective, not an indirect object. Broke his toy. We'll use it with a preposition. In his closet. So in his closet, the prepositional phrase, it would be in the dative case, indirect, because it's indirectly talking about what Silas broke. Where did he break? He broke his toy. He broke his toy in his closet. So that would be the indirect case. Now the vocative, as we mentioned, would be the direct address. We're not going to spend much time. We'll probably do a little bit with this later on. I don't remember when. And you can see why. It's only used less than 1% of the time for nouns. And it's normally pretty obvious in the way it stands out. So we'll get to that later. This is where we left off. We were talking about how case endings and what they really look like. Apostolos, meaning messenger, meaning apostle, How do I know if it's the subject or if this apostle is the object? Jesus went to the apostles or went to the apostle, went to the apostle Peter, or the apostle Peter went to Jesus. How do I know if it's the subject or if it's the direct object? Well, it's not by position in the word order, not in Greek. In English, we would know by the word order, but in Greek, we know by the case ending would tell us how it functions. So we have the root, I had to call it root because sometimes roots really different and take more time. But with its connecting vowel, this is the stem that we saw in our little tree or little bush, and we add the case ending, and that tells us it's functioning in the nominative. The nominative, I'm going to just abbreviate nominative. Nominative case, which means it's functioning as the subjective, Jective, or really the subject of the sentence or of the clause or phrase. Maybe it's a prepositional phrase. Okay, and so if we want to say Jesus went to the apostle, maybe the apostle Peter, and it's the same word, same meaning, but its function in syntactically in the sentence, in the structure, is different. And again, we don't use word order in Greek to show that function. We use what's called the case endings, or the inflection using case endings. And so we would end it with a different case ending to show its functioning in the accusative case. In the accusative case, abbreviated accusative ACC, that is the direct object, and we're going to typically abbreviate DO in that regards, okay? And so it's up in the objective. That's really an English term, objective case versus subjective case. In Greek, it's a nominative case and the accusative case, okay? And so that's how we know how it functions in the sentence. So when we do our translations, we know if it precedes the verb or is part of the predicate, that is, it follows the verb, and hence we would then know how to use it in an English sentence and how it's meant in the Greek sentence, okay? So a stem, remember we had our little root system down here, and we had this stem growing up, and then we have these branches with leaves and stuff growing around here, right? So that stem right here, which comes from the root, is going to be here, the apostala. Notice it's the same stem. And so what we've done is we've added different case endings. This is, again, the nominative case ending, and this is the accusative case ending. And that's going to tell us how that functions. It happens to be nominative singular and accusative singular, which we'll get to next here. Like in all languages, there are genders. Now we're talking about grammatical gender, not natural gender. It may be that natural gender and grammatical gender are in agreement, but that's not always the case. And nor do we need to emphasize the natural gender. So, but the neat thing about gender is a noun, whatever gender it is, that's the way it always is. It's not going to change. So while the case may change, in other words, it may function as nominative or accusative, as the subject or as the indirect object, but it's always going to be apostolos, is always going to be masculine. And excuse me, the example here is hamartolos, sinner. Hamartolos, yeah, that's right, hamartolos, as sinner. And so that's going to always be a masculine word. Harmatia, also meaning sin, not sinner, but sin, is a feminine word. It'll always be feminine. We'll get later on, or here very shortly, to see how to recognize these. So a noun is either going to be masculine, feminine, or neuter in gender, and this is important, and you need to be able to recognize it because basically, especially seeing how we're not dealing with word order as much, although there is some of this, and we'll talk later about it. But the emphasis is going to be in word agreement. If we're talking about a feminine or a person who is a person, we're talking about a feminine event or thing, then other related, say, adjectives, say it's a fatal, or let's say it's a bad sin, okay? is a bad harmatia. Well, bad and harmatia would both have to be in the feminine case to understand that bad modifies harmatia, the sin itself. So they have to be in agreement. So recognizing the gender as well as the number would have to be in agreement. So number, of course, is really just singular or plural. That's all we're dealing with. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's singular or plural. And we again know that by our case ending. There are certain case endings that function as the nominative singular and certain case endings that function as the nominative plural. In this case, apostolos is the singular for apostle. So it's just an apostle or the apostle, either way, depending upon the article that's used. But if I want to talk about all the apostles, where that's 12 or 11 or what number, it's going to be plural and it have a different case ending. The case ending here versus here, and that is also nominative. In other words, it's a subject. So both of these are in the nominative. It is both the subject, S-U-B-J, will abbreviate, and this is subject, nominative, okay, which means it's functioning as subjective, the subject. But this is the plural and this is the singular. And that's the only real, not only real difference, that is the difference between them. And so again, the case ending will help us to recognize that. I'm going to pull all this together in a minute and you'll start to see sort of the big picture and then look for patterns. That's what we want to do. Patterns is important. It leads us into what's called a declension. Greek nouns follow a pattern. If it's a masculine, well, let me don't do it that way. There are certain patterns for words. Feminine words follow a specific pattern in their declension, in their case endings. They'll have a different pattern for the case endings, and they're fit in what's called the first declension. So basically, that's nothing more a pattern for feminine words, like angelea. Okay, they're first declension words. They're feminine words, and they primarily, there are some exceptions. There are some masculine, and they will end with an alpha or an eta. I say end because this is the stem ending, alpha or eta. And when we get to we'll look a little more at it, but they'll end in the alpha or eta, and those really are the connecting vowels or the stem endings, right? Remember we said, like apostolos, there is our stem with the connecting vowel omicron, and its case ending right here is the sigma. For that tells me automatically that that is a nominative, singular, masculine, or possibly neuter. We'll get to that in a minute. Noun. And so in this case, I know it's going to be masculine because this word grammatically is always masculine. So it cannot be neuter. That's a different, we'll get to that in a few moments. Pneuma actually has its connecting vowel, but its root ends in a consonant, not a vowel. And so it is a third declension. So we have a first declension pattern of how to recognize nouns, a second declension pattern of how to recognize nouns, and those will be either masculine or neuter. The first declension will be all feminine, and they'll end with the stem will end with alpha or eta. And then we have these third declension ones. We're going to get to those a little later because a lot of things occur. And so its stems will end in a consonant. There we have the mu consonant right there. And it can be masculine, feminine, or neuter, and we're going to get more. That will become much more clear when we get to that. That is not today. Today we're going to introduce the first declension pattern for the nominative and the accusative nouns, and the second declension pattern for the nominative and the accusative nouns, both plural, singular, and plural for both. Okay? And that's what we're looking at today. So all we're doing is recognizing that all words fall into various patterns. They're either going to fall into a first declension pattern, which is going to be generally with feminine nouns. And those feminine nouns are almost always going to have a connecting vowel of alpha or eta, right? Alpha or eta. and then or second declension pattern, which is either going to be a masculine or neuter words. So you can have a masculine or a neuter word that follows a pattern in a different pattern, and the consonant would be a third. The consonant in the root ending would be a third declension, or excuse me, the stem ends in a consonant, and it can be either masculine, feminine, or neuter. We're not going to really deal with this for a little while, so let's not get too focused on there. Let's make sure we understand these two, and then this will become much more recognizable when we get there. All right, so here's another way to look at this. Okay, we're talking about inflection. We're talking about noun cases. We're going to function on the accusative case and the nominative case. How does the nominative case work? Well, it's nominative, which means it's functioning as the subject. The accusative, well, it's going to be functioning as the direct, I'm just going to abbreviate direct object. Okay, direct object, like that. And so what we see here is we're going to look at our root. I'm not really going to spend any time in the root per se. There's lots of things associated with roots that I really don't want to spend time at this level, at this point. But notice there's a connecting vowel, and then there is a case ending. Okay. Now up here, I have the connecting vowel and the case ending. And so we have our root, connecting vowel, which becomes, this becomes the stem. So right here is the stem. La ga, right? La ga is the stem. And let me clear this because it's too messy. I'm just trying to be a little smarter, a little neater with this. Okay, so this is our stem right here. And then we have our case endings or our leaves or branches, however you want to look at it. And right now we're only focusing on the nominative and the accusative. All right, and this is referred to a second declension masculine pattern. So there's a pattern, and we want to follow that pattern for masculine words in the second declension. And what you'll find is second declension will have a connecting vowel of omicron. And let's see if I get the next slide here. There we go. So in the nominative singular, we have nominative singular. That's where we're at. We're singular. Nominative singular, we have this sigma. That's our case ending to talk about the nominative. So we have our root, we have our stem, and we have our branches or leaves or whatever. And those are the ones that look like with the sigma ending, with the omicron connecting vowel, omicron sigma. That's going to be our nominative. Omicron nu with the nu, that is going to be in the accusative. So that's nominative singular, accusative singular, and that's basically the structure for it. If we want to do, let me see, where's mine? Okay. The plural form, okay, it didn't come up. This should have a little plural up here. It must appear. A-L-U-R-A-L. All right, plural. So we are still dealing with the nominative and the accusative, right? Nominative. Excuse me, not nominative. That is wrong, wrong. Make sure you correct me. Okay, don't let me mess it up. This is we'll start with the nominative, and this is the accusative. So we're going to look at our color codes, right? Nominative, accusative. Now, the only bad news is you don't have these color codes in the actual Greek. But for now, it helps us to think through and think about it. So in the singular, we have for the nominative singular masculine second declension pattern. I just want to call it a pattern. We're going to have the case ending that ends with a sigma. Well, that just means that word ending with a sigma, logos, means it's functioning here as the subject. If it's plural and it's functioning as a subject, it's nominative plural, then it's going to have the omicron iota. Omicron is the connecting vowel, and the iota is going to be our plural case ending for second declension pattern. And then for the accusative, we're going to have the upsilon sigma. We still have our omicron, so our stem remained the same the whole time, right? Our stem did not change between the singular and plural or between the nominative subjective case or the accusative direct object case. That did not change. What changed was the case endings, the sigma or the nu. Sigma meaning nominative singular, nu was going to recognize as accusative singular. The iota, the omicron iota is going to recognize it then as the nominative plural. And the upsilon sigma, the omicron upsilon sigma, will make it recognizable as the accusative plural. And so now when I could translate logos, logos here in this case would be the subject, right? We would say the word or message or whatever. And here, logos, it's going to be logon, right, is going to be the direct object, and it's still going to be word, at least in English, and or message or whatever, but it's going to be functioning as the direct object, and now it's the subject. Over here is going to be, so that's still word singular. Here it's going to be words plural. Also here, words plural. The difference is here it's going to function as the subject plural, and so words plural, and here it's going to be the direct object plural. So you see the meaning of the word didn't really change, although its function. Now here the meaning did change in the sense that it's plural versus singular kind of thing. So hopefully this is kind of making sense in this pictorial view to kind of make it come together. And we want to, now that was a second declension, all right? Second declension is a pattern. There's a pattern for certain nouns that follow what we call second declension. And those are going to have an omicron connecting vowel or stem ending, okay? The connecting vowel is the stem ending, and it's going to follow a certain pattern. So let me clear this and just highlight that pattern real quick. Clear markings. Go back to here. Okay, so notice we have our omicron stem ending. That is second declension. One time is masculine, another time it is neuter. Oh, it's still masculine. Excuse me, we hadn't got to neuter yet. So I apologize. You cannot have the same word be masculine in one case or one sense, in another sense neuter. It's always masculine or always neuter. Logos, loga is always masculine, and it's going to be second declension. Now, how it functions is determined by its case ending, whether it's nominative singular or nominative plural or accusative singular or accusative plural. That's what's being highlighted here. All right, so you also have, well, that's the same thing. Okay, now we're going to move to neuter. And just in comparison, we have our, we're looking at singular still, but now we're looking at second declension, masculine words. Logos is always going to be a masculine word. Logon is a masculine word. This case is functioning singularly in the accusative or direct object. This case, I know I'm repeating myself, but I need to do that. Logos is functioning singularly in the nominative case for the subject, right? And you see there's our case ending with our connecting vowel and our connecting vowel or stem ending. And so that stem ending is still the omicron here, okay? But now we're still in second declension because of the omicron stem ending. But now the word is neuter. So euangeleon is going to be a neuter word. It's not masculine, it's not feminine. I'm not talking natural gender, we're talking about grammatical gender, okay? Euangeleon is going to be a neuter word, and it's going to follow the second declension pattern. Why? Because it has an omicron stem ending, connecting vowel. And so it's going to follow a certain pattern for a second declension masculine versus a second declension neuter. And that pattern becomes obvious as we start putting more and more together, all right? So notice we're still talking about the accusative and the nominative, the direct object, and the subject, okay? All right, so now let's go a little further and look at the plural side. So we're going to compare what we saw with the second declension masculine plural with a second declension neuter plural. In our masculine, we looked at the word logos, now the plural is logoi, in the nominative or subject case, right? In the accusative, it's logus. That is going to be in the accusative, that is the direct object case, right? And that's how we know it functions. But it is now we know it's words plural in the English, right? And so here we're doing also plural, but now we're looking at neuter words. Logos, logoi, logus, logon cannot be neuter. It's always masculine. But it's going to follow a second declension pattern because of the omicron stem ending. All right, so in euangelea, okay, I think basically, yeah. So here we got the nominative ending for the plural, and that's with the alpha. All I'm doing Hebrew with the alpha, right? It's going to follow a specific pattern for neuter words in the second declension versus masculine words in the second declension plural. All right. So we're going to do the same thing now, and we compare with, let's see, I think we pull, in this case, it pulls it all up, I think, if I remember right. Yeah, I thought so. All right. So now we have looked at the second declension pattern. We really haven't talked about what the pattern is. We'll get to that more later, especially when we get all four declension or all four cases up there. The second declension singular, masculine words, second declension pattern for singular neuter words, or logos versus euangelion. And now we want to say, okay, let's look at first declension. Yes, I know first comes before second, but we're doing second first. That's just the natural order of things in Greek grammar. And we just deal with it, okay? So the first declension, again, declension is nothing more than the pattern that the noun follows in the case, in the changes it makes. And so we're just trying to say, oh, there's a certain pattern here. Oh, what is that pattern? Well, certain feminine words follow one pattern. Certain masculine words in second declension follow a different pattern, as do certain neuter words in a second declension. They follow a similar pattern, but different than the masculine words. Okay, we're going to figure out those patterns here momentarily. Now, in the first declension, feminine words, again, we have, there actually is no case ending for the nominative. There really is no case ending there. Instead, you have only the stem ending or the connecting vowel. And here you have the stem ending with a case suffix that's added to it, all right? Here you have agape as no case ending in the nominative singular, but it does, but because it ends with the stem. And here for the accusative, that is the direct object, it has the case ending of the noon with its connecting vowel of the aided. So what you see is there in both of these, the first declension nominative have absolutely no case ending. And that's how you know it's functioning in the nominative case. This means the nominative case, because there is no case ending for the first declension pattern of feminine words. And so part of that pattern. But we do see a connecting vowel or the stem ending of either an alpha or an eta. Those will be the two for feminine words. And again, a feminine word, agape, love, is a feminine word. Basileia, kingdom, or is a feminine word. And it always, basileia will always be feminine. It can never be masculine. It can never be neuter. Agape, love, is always feminine. It can never be masculine, never neuter. And it will always follow a first declension pattern because it's feminine. And we know that because it's a stem ending or connecting vowel. That connecting vowel remains, the stem ending remains, even when we add cases. Then because we added the noon case, we know that it's functioning in the accusative or as the direct object. So once we sort of figure those patterns out. So we see here, we have the omicron sigma, the connecting vowel with the sigma case for the second declension masculine singular. And that tells me it's the nominative. So that's in the blue. Okay. Here is the second declension neuter for omicron nu, again in the nominative. That's why it's in the blue. And here is the no case ending, but you do have the stem endings or connecting vowels, alpha or eta, but no case ending. In the accusative, same thing. We have our omicron. The omicron is the, here is the connecting vowel or stem ending, and the nu is the actual case ending for the accusative. Singular, direct object, right? Direct object. I'm saying it over and over because we just got to get it in our heads. Notice the same thing here. Case ending with the omicron for both the nominative and the accusative. Not case ending for the stem or connecting vowel. And then the noon In this case, and you'll see why part of the pattern. The noon, for whether you're talking the nominative or the singular, we'll talk about how to see the difference later. And so the noon is going to be, so the red is my highlight for the accusative, right? The accusative in the red, that's the direct object versus the subject, which is the only two we're talking about today. And then we get to the first declension pattern. These are feminine words mostly, and they will end in their stem with an alpha or eta. And if it's nominative, there'll be nominative being subject, is functioning as a subject. There'll be no case ending. If it's accusative, that means it's direct object. It will have the noon case ending, and for the singular. Okay, and hopefully that makes some sense. Now, if we take it to the plural, it's going to be the same thing, right? Take it over here. Okay, so we've already done the plural here. We have our connecting vowel. We have our case ending. And so this is the nominative. It's going to be the subject functioning. This is the nominative, or the accusative. It's going to be the direct object functioning. In our plural second declension pattern for masculine words, right? We know it's that because of the omicron connecting vowel. In our second declension words, plural for neuter words, again, we know it's second declension because of the I might have messed something up. Oh, or I'm doing the plural. Okay, not the. Yeah, I got because the Omicron connecting vowel. There are some changes, or I left it out. I think there's some changes here. I can't remember, and I didn't look at it. So the Omicron actually dropped off here, or I messed it up. One of the two. I'll have to look this up. But we see our neuter plural for the nominative and the accusative. We'll verify this in a moment when we get to the next couple of charts. There's a different pattern for first declension feminine words, plural. Again, we have our connecting or stem ending. It's either going to be an alpha or an eta. And then we'll have for the plural, the iota. It will be the, don't do this right if you're going to do this, or don't do it at all. Okay. And there we go. And the iota for the nominative, subjective, plural, or the sigma here for, again, the alpha or eta for the connecting vowel or stem ending, and the sigma here in the accusative for the direct object, iota for the subject. Okay, so I realize that's a lot, but understand we're really just introducing. As you begin to kind of go through this, you begin to see the patterns, and it becomes much clearer. And this is really the kind of stuff that you want to start learning. And there is a little bit of rote memorization associated with some of these patterns. And this is what I want you to figure out. Now, what you normally see is what's called 2-1-2. That is a 2-1-2 pattern. Second declension for masculine, first declension for feminine, and second declension for neuter. That's just an order they typically write it, and so you learn it in this order. So nominative singular, which is the subject, is going to have a case ending with a sigma. In the first declension for feminine words, there is no case ending. It will have the connecting vowel. Over here, to have the connecting vowel, the omicron. Over here, it's going to have the alpha or the eta. And then over here, second declension. I know it's second declension because it's going to have a connecting vowel or stem ending of omicron. And it's in the nominative singular versus the masculine words have a sigma. The neuter words will have a noon case ending. And that's how I know that particular word, which is going to be a neuter word, singular, is going to function as the subject in my translations. This becomes second nature. Trust me. One thing I do want to mention as you go through the languages, whether you're talking about Greek or Hebrew, the initial chapter is almost always sort of foggy, fuzzy, and you kind of feel like, huh? It's like a lot. But I can assure you that within the next couple of chapters, while this chapter becomes a little clearer, it starts to make more sense, especially if you actually do the homework and the quizzes, then it becomes a little clearer, makes more sense. While as you go into the new chapters, they are the fuzzy, foggy ones, And this one makes more sense. This becomes the building block to understand the next ones. And as you move forward, those foggy, fuzzy ones become clearer as you move into other areas, which start out as foggy, but eventually, as you keep moving forward, become clearer. Because as you build on one thing and you get to the next, what you started with becomes more understandable. While in order for you to actually move forward, and you'll see that as we go. So in the accusative singular, we're talking about the noon, noon, noon. There's a pattern, right? Accusative singular. The case ending is going to be noon, noon, noon. So second declension masculine words are going to end in a noon. First declension feminine words, case endings, not stems. Case endings for accusative, direct object, right? Direct object is going to end in a noon. Singular for second declension neuter words are going to end in a noon. Wow, there's an interesting pattern. Notice another pattern. There we have in neuter words, whether you're talking about nominative or accusative, whether you're talking about subject or the direct object, they both end in a noon. So you have noon, 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 noon. There's the pattern that helps you sort of recognize and remember, and over time it becomes natural to you. In the plural, the case endings, iota, iota, and then for iota for a case ending for second declension masculine, first declension feminine words, going to be also iota. And what you'll find is with the this would be omicron iota, and this would be alpha iota or eta iota. Because remember we said that's our connecting vowel, our stem ending, and basically we add the case ending, which in this case is iota, whether you're talking about a second declension masculine or a first declension feminine. But for a second declension neuter word, a word that's a neuter is going to use the omicron because it's second declension connecting vowel or stem ending, and it will have instead the alpha case ending for nominative plural, as well as the alpha for the accusative plural. We'll learn to differentiate that later. So also the omicron connecting vowel. In the so we see another pattern here, another pattern here, another pattern here, and a few others right here. And then we're seeing the accusative plural for second declension patterns, what we're talking about. Masculine words, we have the omicron connecting vowel with the upsilon sigma case ending, and that tells me it's the direct object plural. Here is going to be the alpha or the eta connecting vowel or stem ending with the sigma as the case ending for a first declension feminine word in the plural. Now, how do you know the difference between this sigma and this sigma? Well, one's blue and one's red. Not really, okay? You know that's not going to work. Well, look at the connecting vowel. That is a second declension masculine word. Or it could be a second declension neuter word, but with this sigma, you know it's not neuter. It must be masculine, right? This sigma, it cannot be plural or singular in the first declension feminine pattern. It has an alpha or an eta connecting vowel with it, so it cannot be the nominative singular, which is going to be omicron sigma. Instead, it's going to be the alpha or eta sigma. All right, it's probably a lot, and I know it threw a lot at you, but just sort of kind of walk through it slowly. And what we'll do when we get together, we'll kind of allow us to talk about it and go back through it some. Now, a lot of grammars learn it with the connecting vowel or final stem vowel. So it's either called a final stem vowel, right stem with the final vowel. That vowel is actually a connecting vowel. You don't want to connect the two consonants. You have a connecting vowel, the omicron, or the alpha eta, and then you connect the case ending to that. So it's like it joins it so that you can pronounce it, say it. So a lot of times it's easier to learn it with the connecting vowel. That's my point. But technically that is inaccurate. And some grammars emphasize to learn just the stem, the case ending. I found it personally when I learned it to learn the connecting vowel or stem, final stem ending with the connecting vowel. Remember, nominative, feminine for first declension patterns does not have a connecting or a case ending, C-A-H-E ending. It just has the alpha or eta stem ending, right? And here the omicron is the stem final vowel or connecting vowel stem ending, and the noon is going to be. So sometimes it may be easier to learn it with the connecting vowel, just for pronunciation purposes. Either way works. There are advantages to learning just the case endings, because these connecting vowels will change based on some other things that happen later on. And so recognizing the case endings. But truthfully, you really end up looking at the whole thing, the connecting vowel, the case endings, and you begin to learn why things change later on. So we'll look at that. So hopefully you can kind of see a little bit of a pattern. Notice that we see, let me clear this up. We can notice that we see that in our accusative singular, whether you're talking about second declension masculine, a first declension feminine, or a second declension neuter, the case ending is a noon. All right, that is a pattern. Now, if it has an omicron connecting vowel, then it's going to be a second declension masculine or second declension neuter word. Depending upon the word, when you learn vocabulary, you learn certain words are masculine and other words are, in fact, neuter. Well, you just end up figuring that out. And so it's not really hard to, it's part of your vocabulary, in other words. You see another pattern where you see here the nominative singular and the accusative singular also are going to be the same in terms of its case ending. They're nouns. Same with the plural. The nominative plural and the accusative plural are going to be the same. Matter of fact, it's going to be one of the rules that we have. Okay, but Greek grammar has. You can see a pattern of the oi and the I, the iota ending here, and you see the sigma ending here, and this is a us, although really this is us, and the omicron is the connecting vowel. Sigma is the case ending, and the alpha here is alpha is going to be alpha or eta. Actually, I'm thinking it's always alpha, but I'm not positive. Anyway, you can see, begin to start seeing a pattern. This pattern will actually fill in even more when we look at the other cases, but that'll come later. So when we look at words, logos is a masculine word. Excuse me. And because it's a masculine word, it follows a second declension pattern with this, because it has the, excuse me, I don't have any water with me right now. Because we have an omicron connecting vowel, and it is a masculine word, it's going to follow the second declension pattern. The pattern is going to tell me what case endings I use for the various, or there we go, the upsilon, sigma, for the various functions. In the nominative singular, it's going to have a sigma case ending. In the accusative singular, it's going to have a noon case ending. In the nominative plural, it's going to have the iota case ending. Accusative plural is going to have a upsilon sigma case ending. Again, this is the functioning nominative. It's going to be subject, subject, and the accusative is the direct object and the direct object. So that's our masculine words. Logos is always masculine, following a second declension pattern. I know it's a second declension pattern because it has the omicron stem ending. And the second declension neuter words, again, a neuter word is always going to be a neuter word. It's going to have its pattern. It's a second declension pattern because of the omicron. The omicron actually is there, but it's gone. It got absorbed, I'm pretty sure. I didn't look at it, I've forgotten, but ultimately I'm pretty sure it's there. It got absorbed, okay? It's going to follow the same pattern, and we're going to have a noon for the nominative singular, so the subject, a noon also for the accusative. This will always, whatever's up here, will always be here for neuter second declension, or actually I think neuter. And the same with this alpha for the plural. Will always be the same. So there's a pattern here. When we get to a first declension pattern, we're generally talking about feminine words. And again, the nominative singular has no case ending, none. It ends instead with the final stem vowel, the eta or the alpha or eta. Now here you have again the eta or alpha, agape, love, basileia, kingdom, and the alpha connecting vowel with the noon. The noon ending tells me it's a in the accusative case, functioning as a direct object. The plural, here's our iota for the plural with its connecting vowel. In that case, it's the alpha. The sigma and the sigma for the plural accusative. So it's a direct object. Did I say this was direct? This is nominative. I don't know what I said, but that's a nominative functioning as the subject. So again, if we kind of glance at the patterns that you might begin to see, as we could see that we have here noon, 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 noon. There's a noon pattern here. There's a noon pattern here. There's a alpha or eta pattern there. There's the vowel iota pattern, the connecting vowel iota, and here's the omicron iota pattern. So iota, iota, iota for the plural, and then the sigma ending for our accusative plural in the masculine and feminine, first declension, second declension. So that begins to make a little sense. And I want to kind of turn to the definite article now. All we did on nouns is we talked about the various case endings. And these case endings will follow specific patterns depending upon whether the word is masculine or and singular, well, masculine or feminine, or neuter, or basically a consonant stem. So our words that end in an omicron in the stem endings with omicron is going to follow a second declension pattern. Words that end in an alpha or eta in their stem is going to follow a first declension pattern. Words that end in a consonant, which we have not gotten to, will follow a third declension pattern. You learn the first and second. The third declension is going to be different, but it's going to be more, you'll be able to follow it, although there are a lot more changes that occur, which we'll get to later. So ultimately, I want you to begin to recognize what's happening here. Second declension has an omicron for its stem. It follows a certain pattern, whether you're talking about singular, whether you're talking about plural, and that pattern is going to tell us what is functioning in the nominative or the accusative case, the subject or the direct object, whether singular or plural. Same thing with the feminine, except in the nominative there is no case endings. And we'll find a pattern for, say, like all the accusative ends in a noon, and other patterns that we'll bring out here. The article can be your absolute best friend once you really learn the article in terms of recognizing whether a word is masculine, whether a word is feminine, or whether a word is neuter. Notice now we're not dealing with declensions anymore, first declension, second declension, third declension, that we are dealing with a masculine word, a feminine word, or a neuter word, and all masculine articles in the nominative subject. If it has an article, it will have the omicron with a rough breathing above it, okay? That's why it's in blue. It's in the nominative, right? And so masculine words, masculine nouns, if it has an article and that word is functioning in the subjective case, is the subject, the nominative case, excuse me, then it will have, and if it does have an article, it will be the ha, the omicron with a rough breathing. If it's a feminine word, it will also have a rough breathing, except that now it will have the eta. And so it has the rough breathing with the eta. And so it's hey. A neuter words doesn't have a rough breathing. It's just going to have a ta. Notice all neuter words begin with a ta, with a tau. And so we have ta, 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 ta. Ta with O, ta with an A sound, very similar, hard to differentiate sometimes. Ha, hey, ta. That's really how you want to learn it. Ha, hey, ta. There is on the LMS under chapter 6 a video where a guy sings this, and it's really helpful. Ha, hey, ta, ton, tang, ta, hoi, hi, ta, tus, tas, ta. You really learn it that way. So our nominative singular is going to be for the article ha, for the masculine, feminine for hey, and neuter for ta. Why is it masculine, feminine, and neuter? Why are they different? Because the article is going to agree with the word it's associated with. To make a masculine word definite, it's going to have a ha. To make a feminine word definite, it's going to have a hey. To make a neuter word definite, it's going to have a ta. In the nominative case, and when it's functioning as a subject. But if that word, the same word, say logos, or basileia, or agape, or euangelion, if it's functioning in masculine, logos, that same word will now have an article, ton. Well, notice that noon, well, here you got omicron, okay? Very similar patterns. Ton, tame, ta. That ton tells me that is a masculine word that is functioning in the accusative case as the direct object. So the word associated with this direct article, right, is going to agree, the article is going to agree with the word or vice versa. And so if this is accusative singular, then the word it's associated with, let's say logos, is going to be logon, singular accusative, right? So this would have to be logon. This would have to be logos because it's a nominative singular, and this is a nominative singular. So that's a accusative singular, and this is an accusative singular. That's how the agreement works. So if you once you learn this, you almost don't have to know if logos is a masculine word or not. I know that this is masculine. Ha, ton, hoi, tus are masculine. And so it's almost easier in some ways. You need to learn both. It's almost easier in some ways to really embed the definite article. There's a song in the LMS. It's really good, and it helps to sort of bring that out. The definite article for feminine words in the accusative, agape. Agape means love. In the in the nominative case, the subject, it's going to be agape, no case ending. Its article will be the hey agape, hey agape, hey agape. And then, but if it's functioning in the accusative case as the direct object of the sentence, it's going to be not hey agape, but tain agapein, right? It's going to be agapein ending with the noon ending, and the article is going to be tain agapein. That makes it understandable and recognizable how it functions in the sentence. If it's a neuter word, euangelion, then ta for the nominative singular and ta for the accusative singular. How do you tell the difference? We'll get there. Okay. Basically, well, we'll get there. There are other clues that will stand out. I think if you go back to, yeah, we'll get there in a minute. Anyway, context will help that tremendously, and some answers is going to be context, but there are other clues that come out later on. For plural words, we got the same thing. We got hoi, hi, ta. That is the accusative. Now, if you notice, hoi is the exact same ending. There's like for the word, right? If we say logon, we say logos, right? Well, let's say take a masculine word, logos. All right, logos. This is a singular nominative masculine word right there. And I want to make it plural. I want to say words plural, W-O-R-D-S. Now I'm going to say log oi. I'm going to use this oi. Well, there I have my connecting vowel and have the iota for the plural, nominative plural, functioning as words, or translated as words, functioning as the subject. So that, notice it's the same ending. There's my article. So I would say I want to make it the words. That's hoi, lagoi. Notice the ending is the same. That really helps you. Hi, excuse me, with the rough breathing, same thing for feminine words. Ta for accusative neuter words, or nominative plural, nominative plural neuter words. Accusative and the masculine words will have tus for its article, tas for feminine direct object accusative words, and ta. So the way you learn this, basically, the way you practice this over and over and over again. Ha he ta ton tang ta hoi hai ta tus tas ta, and you just kind of keep doing that, and pretty soon it sticks. So that's a definite article. Let's talk a little bit more about how this works. Okay. The nominative, which is the subject of the sentence, and the accusative cases, right? Which is the accusative is the direct object of the sentence. So in English, word order, it matters. Now, Greek word order matters too, but not for the same reasons. All right. In English, word order matters because that's how we understand the how the words function. subject will generally almost always come before the verb that is describing the action that the subject is doing. And then the object that is receiving the action will come after the verb, right? So here we have the agape. This is the verb, right? So we're talking about the verb here, agape, and the verb, and it means loves. All right, agape, ha theos. There's our article. Okay, the God. Now we generally, because generally have the article associated with theos, but in English we almost never translate the. So we have ha theos mean God, and then you have ton cosmon. Notice the ending. There's our omicron connecting vowel. There's our article ton. And we have our noon, right? That is the accusative. And so it's functioning as the object. So in this case, we have the loves God the world, and we would translate it in English as God loves the world. Why? Because ha theos, God, is the subject, and loves is of course our verb, and then the world is of course the direct object. God does what? He loves. What does he love? The world. Subject, verb, direct object, or really subject, predicate. Okay. And notice that in Greek, I'm going to do more of that, but I want to clear this because I'm really emphasizing it hard if you didn't notice it. Okay. In Greek, here's our word order. I can't remember if that's the word order in the actual text, and maybe I don't remember. I'd have to look at it. Doesn't really matter. Word order does not determine how the words function. The case endings determine, as well as the articles with it, but really the case endings determine how the word functions. Here is the direct object functioning as the accusative, meaning it is God loves what? He loves the world. Okay, so now the only way to determine the subject or direct object is by the case ending. So we could say agape, ha theos, ton kosmon. Or we could say ha theos agape ton kosmon. Or we could say ton kosmon agape ha theos. Or we could say ha theos ton kosmon agape. And they all mean the exact same thing. God loves the world. This order doesn't impact our English translation. Now, the order can have an impact on where emphasis is placed, but that's a lesson for later. So order can matter, not always, but can matter in Greek because of certain emphasis. And normally there's a typical pattern in how things are depicted or in the word order, but it's not the same as English. And if that pattern changes, oftentimes it's for a reason, and generally it's to put some emphasis there. Anyway, we'll get to that another time. But what the point is you see these are all different word orders, but it didn't change the meaning of anything because they all mean God loves the world. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. Now, how do we translate? What's the process? So let's find the subject and the direct object. We're going to focus on verb later. Later, when we get to verbs, we're going to tell you that's the most important thing. Find the verb first, but we're not there. Let's focus on the subject. Well, I know my subject is going to end in a sigma if it's a masculine word. And there I see it's a omicron connecting vowel. There's my article. That helps me tremendously. Ha is going to be a nominative, always a nominative case. And here the word that's related to ha, the os then must also be nominative. It is the subject. Direct object, and here's this looks like it is a feminine word. Yep, so feminine accusative plural, right? And the omicron sigma, souls. So this is God will save. So say is will save. We'll get to verbs another time. Will save souls. I don't think that's a scriptural text. I think that's just an example. So definite articles do not always need to be translated if the word is a proper noun or an abstract concept like love or truth. So we don't always translate the definite article. It's not always the God. God will save souls. So ha theos is a masculine number singular functioning as a subject. Psychos is meaning souls is the direct object, and the feminine accusative plural functioning as the direct object. So find the nouns and see how that noun is functioning. Is it functioning as a nominative case, singular, plural? Accusative case, singular, plural. If it's nominative, it's going to be in the subject. If it's accusative, it's going to be in the direct object. That's pretty much at least general practice. And there are really rules for this and how to recognize this. So I'm going to go over 3 rules. I think there's 7 total, not a lot. And we've already touched on these, so they shouldn't be completely unfamiliar. So noun rule, we're talking about noun rule number 1. Stems, right? Not the case ending, but stem endings in an alpha or eta are in the first declension. Alpha or eta. What does that mean? That means that is going to follow a pattern so that we can recognize the case endings for feminine words now, mostly feminine words, okay? Not all first declension words are feminine. There are some masculine words, but they're not a lot. But that's the general pattern, all right? Stems, again, stems ending in an omicron are second declension. That means it's going to have a second declension pattern. So here's our omicron stem ending or connecting vowel. Here's our alpha or eta stem ending or connecting vowel. That will follow that means generally it means a first declension feminine word, and it follow a specific pattern that's unique to first declension. Stems ending in the omicron will follow a second declension pattern that are unique to the second declension. And then stems ending in a consonant, such as the mu here, will follow a third declension pattern that we're not going to get into now. We just want to learn the first and second declensions, okay? Noun rule number 1. Stem endings in an alpha or eta are in the first declension. Stem endings in an omicron are in the second declension pattern. Again, it's a pattern for the case endings. Stems ending in a consonant will follow a pattern associated with the third declension pattern associated with case endings for that for words that are either masculine, feminine, or neuter in a third declension pattern. Noun rule number 2. Every neuter word has the same form in the nominative and the accusative. What is that? It's going to be a noun ending, nominative and accusative, right? And so if we go to that matrix, that's the article, go back up. Let me clear this. Okay, neuter, noun. That's what that rule says. That's all it says. Okay, and so noun rule number 2, every neuter word has the same form in the nominative and accusative, right? And now rule number 3, all neuter words in an alpha in the nominative and accusative in an alpha, I think it's supposed to be in an alpha, in the nominative and accusative. So let's go back and see that. Okay, here we go. All right, so here we go. Alpha. There's the pattern. So noun rule number 2, number 2, and number 3. All right, that's the pattern. We can see another pattern that we have the noon for accusative, and some other patterns we'll highlight as we go, especially the hoy, high, and other patterns. Okay. All right, so that's noun rule number 1, 2, and 3. Those are the first 3, I think, of 7 noun rules, if I remember right. And let's reiterate the definite article: ha, hey, ta, ton, tain, ta, hoi, hi, ta, tus, tas, ta. That's what you want to learn. And you can see the same thing. It ends in a ta, ta, a ta, ta. These are same ending. This is the article for, let's say, a euangelion, right? I won't spell it all out. Euangelion, or the plural forget the plural? No, so I went blank here. Hold on a minute. Well, all right, we'll get to that later. I got to get back to this slide right here. Okay, yeah, all right, that's what I was thinking. And so this would be also here, following the same pattern. So anyway, you really want to learn, what I'm trying to emphasize is you learn this will help you to remember and recognize the case endings for the nouns. So if you learn the definite articles, it'll help you with the case endings for the nouns. You need to learn both, but the article helps you to learn the other. So vocabulary, agape. So I would normally ask you, if you were here, is this a masculine or feminine word? You would answer, oh, it's a feminine. I said, correct. It's a feminine because there is a connecting vowel. In this case, is eta. So either an alpha or eta will be the connecting stem ending. And by the way, in vocabulary, you're always looking at, not always, but almost always looking at the nominative singular form of the word, nominative singular form of the word. Agape is a nominative singular, and I know this is a feminine word because of the eta stem ending here. I say no. There are some exceptions, but here I know it is. All right, now you're going to see some other pieces here. So when we go back to here, we're going to learn this pattern for the nominative singular, for the dative singular, and the genitive singular, and then the nominative plural. There's room for the vocative here, but we're not going to go with the vocative. And so the nominative, the dative, and the genitive. So when we learn all that, we'll fill all this in, fill all this in, fill all this in, fill all this in, and what that does for us is when we get to these words, we'll learn that this is actually to help us to recognize the pattern. This is going to be the genitive ending for the singular. So here we have the nominative ending for feminine. This is first declension, so it's going to follow a first declension pattern, right? And because that's the feminine, the eta or alpha is going to be a first declension pattern. And here's our connecting vowel. That's the same eta right there, same one, except you have the sigma, and you're going to find when we learn the others, this is going to be the genitive. And this, so your vocabulary is always going to give you the nominative first, so you know what it looks like as a subject, right? The subject. And then it's going to give you, that's what this comma, it's going to give you what the genitive looks like. And that helps you to recognize the rest of the pattern. Once you see these two, you recognize the rest of it. You'll see why later. It also gives you the definite article. So I know it's a feminine word because it has a feminine definite article. The hey is a feminine nominative. So again, vocabulary words will always be the nominative singular unless there isn't a nominative. There's some words that won't function in nominative. There are also some words, by the way, that do not decline, do not change, inflect certain names or pronouns or words that carried over, say, from Aramaic into the Greek, or from other languages, not necessarily Aramaic, that would be Hebrew, carried over into the Greek from other languages. They may not decline. In other words, they may not vary, nominative, genitive, dative. They may be the same regardless. But that's a different thing. All right, so a loss, another. I think I've got to pull my vocabulary to make sure because it's been a while since I've looked at it. That's one thing I like going back over this because it helps me remember. I didn't look at the vocabulary before now. I don't know why, I just didn't. Okay, so you see on page 48 and 49, a loss is other or another. Okay, again, it is you're going to see the nominative singular in the vocabulary, right? Nominative singular, a loss. We see the omicron connecting vowel or stem ending with the sigma. There's our nominative subject, right? But it is an adjective, not a noun. So this adjective, what happens to it? It's going to adjective does what? It has to be able to modify a noun. It has to be able to modify a masculine noun. It has to be modify a feminine noun. It has to be able to modify a neuter noun. So it has greater flexibility so that it can modify any of these. And it has to agree. If it's modifying a masculine, it's going to have to look like this. If it's modifying a feminine nominative, it's going to have to look like this. If it's modifying a neuter nominative, it's going to have to look like this. So it'd be I'd say look like this. It's the it's smooth breathing accent. Uh, LA. Is that right? I can't even remember. Yeah, I think that's right. Or again, la or alon or whatever. But yeah, it's going to have the neuter ending versus feminine ending versus masculine ending for the nominative singular case. This is all nominative singular right here. Okay. I should have looked at the vocabulary before I did this, but oh well, we're close. We'll correct anything I mess up, which is for me not unusual. I'll toss meaning he, she, or it. Here's our masculine, that is he. Here's our feminine, right? So te, uh, that's feminine. Al, ta, that's masculine, or neuter, excuse me. So it's he, she is feminine, neuter, it, right? He, she, it. Okay, so that is basically, that's it for now anyway. Okay. Basileia, kingdom, is a feminine word, or there's my, my article to let me understand and know it's a feminine word. Here's my nominative singular. Again, that's our normal vocabulary singular. Nominative singular, there is no case ending for nominative singular feminine, first declension. Going to follow a pattern for first declension. And this is a feminine word using the alpha as the stem ending. This would be the genitive case, and then there is the direct article that makes it really recognizable as a feminine word. Okay. Basileia, de is what's called a post-positive. All right, let me just explain that real quick. I do want you to realize that post-positive. So in de will never appear first in the sentence. It'll always be second or even third, generally second in the sentence. De means but, also, or even in the vocabulary. I think but and is what the textbook says, but also or even, and is another thing. Chi, typically, as you already learned, is and, but de can also mean and, but generally it's going to be what's called a adversative. Is that right? I think so. But he said this, and it's called a postpositive because there will always be in the sentence some other word that comes before that. But when you translate it, this will become the first word in translation. So it's called a postpositive. It basically in our translation becomes the first word, but this, but it may say this, de. Now this, de, we did already talked about this before. This is an ellipsis. Remember, we said that sometimes if you have de and agape is the next word, this epsilon will drop off and be replaced with the uh, uh, ellipsis, the comma, raised comma, and that's to support pronunciation. So it's not de agape, it's de agape. And so you don't pronounce the epsilon; it's gone. That's all that's indicating. We did touch on that before. In is going to be a preposition. So here's your first preposition, I think, and it means in. In means in. How hard is that? All right. You need to practice. In means in. Not going to be difficult. We'll get to more about prepositions in chapter 8, I think. Ergon. Ergon means work. I think that's right. I'm going to memory. Yeah, word, deed, or action. And notice ergon, I have my connecting vowel or stem ending as an omicron, so that is a second declension. I'd be asking you these as a test, second declension, not in the test, to test your understanding if you were in the class. The omicron is going to tell me it's a second declension, and this is the nominative case, and it has the noon ending, so nominative singular case. So that's going to tell me it's neuter. Neuter. So the word work or deed, ergon, is a neuter word. Here's our genitive ending, which we haven't got to, and there is the neuter, nominative singular article, ta. And kairos, meaning time or season. And so here we see second declension, nominative singular masculine, because of the sigma ending. There's our genitive ending, and there's our nominative singular masculine article, ha. Noon, now or already, an adverb, now, the present. Really, adverb would be now. If it functions as a noun, which I don't know how much it really does that. I'm just used to the adverb function, basically meaning now. It's just an adverb. An adverb modifies a verb. Okay, an adjective modifies a noun. So noon, and here's our articles: ha, hey, ta. This is the nominative singular, right? And the accusative, it would be. Why am I going blank? I'm doing article. Okay, yeah, article would be ton. I think I'm right. Tane or ton. Yeah, ton. And ton. No, that's not right. Oh, no, ton. There we go. I think that's right. I have to go back and look because I don't remember. Article. That's nouns. Article. See, if I don't do it often enough, I forget as well. All right, article is my matrix for article. Master inventory. Yeah, by the way, I do want to point, if you go to the back of your book, remember the page, I can find the page number. The back of your book, I don't mind making a fool of myself now and then, and it doesn't really matter. Let's just say that we all have more to learn. Primary and secondary, we're not there yet. Let's see if I got the article. Where's the article here? There's 8 noun rules. Actually, 8 noun rules are going to be on page 422. We just did the first 3. We'll get to the rest later. On page 421, we see the master case ending chart, which right now we've only done the nominative for first and second declension and the accusative for first and second declension. So this might look a little overwhelming. We're not there yet. Trust me, you'll get there. Where is the article? That's what I'm looking for. Stop preposition. Let's see the article. You have on that laminated sheet, fold out, right? The fold out laminated sheet. You have all of this in the back of the book and on that laminated sheet, including the article matrix. To get to the article matrix, I'll just go back here. Okay, there it is. All right, so so neuter is going to be ta, and in the accusative ton. So, which I think is what I had. So let me see if I messed it up. Yeah, ton, and this is ton. All right, I know they're all in a new. Just trying to remember all that. Yeah, ton. Oh, tame with the eta, not the alpha. Okay, so I had that wrong. Don't you feel good? Yeah, I love doing this and recording and get it wrong. Tame. All right. So that would be the accusative. All that to show the accusative. One point is, and when you look it up in the dictionary or in the lexicon, it's going to show you the nominative singular. And there's the masculine, feminine, and neuter. Okay. Hati, that, or because. Notice rough breathing. Hati, meaning that or because. It's just a what's it called, that since or because. It's I forget what it's called now. It doesn't say it in the book. I'll figure it out later. All right, so here's the word "oo," meaning no or not. But it can show up as ook or ooks, also meaning no or not. Let me see how they translate it, make sure I get this. Meaning not, okay. Now notice oo here begins, it says we're reading on page 50, is used when the next word begins with a consonant, right? So the next word begins with a consonant, oo, and the next word begins with a consonant, whatever that consonant is. I can write, or any consonant, kappa. Then it's going to be oo. If it says ook when the next word begins with a vowel, so if the next word, like agape, then it will be written as ook, and ooks if the next word begins with a vowel with a rough breathing. Okay, and that's what that's doing. That means not. I thought it meant no too. I think it can be used as either, but I think it's generally not here if that's what they got. I'll look it up later. Hora means hour. Notice the rough breathing. Ho ra. 2 syllables. Ho ra. And so it's like ho ra. Hora. This is I would ask you, it's a feminine word, right? Because we see the stem ending. There is no case ending. We're talking about nominative singular because we're looking at the lexicon. And it's going to show us the nominative singular, feminine word. Case ending is the alpha or eta. In this case, it's the alpha. So that word hora is feminine. It's the genitive form. This is the nominative singular form. This is the genitive singular. Here's the nominative singular article for nominative singular words, right? With feminine words. All right, and we're not going to do any of this. This is sort of a walkthrough how to look at the case or gapon. We'll do a couple of these just for the gapon. Here's the accusative case, right? Because it's the Omicron nu, number is going to be singular. The gender is going to be, okay, and I'm in the accusative neuter. So it could be masculine or neuter. I don't know just by looking at this. Now, I happen to know anthropos is actually masculine. So if I were to look it up, I'd say it's masculine. In the lexical form, we're going to be in the same word. I'll go ahead and write it out this time. I'm not going to do it all times. I can't spell. Pos would be its lexical form. Lexical form means how I'm going to find it in the dictionary, right? It's inflected meaning. Inflected meaning, it talks about how does it mean in that usage in the text itself, and it's going to mean anthropos, man or human or mankind in the singular. So it's not going to be mankind, can be human in the singular in the direct object usage right there. Horai, there's our ho. We know that is in the, this would be in the, this is the nominative case. It is plural. That's the iota ending. It is feminine, right, because of the alpha stem ending. Lexical form was going to be ho ra, and in its inflected meaning, horai is going to mean hours, plural. Notice I have to, if you put hour, it's wrong because inflected meaning is plural. Tain is the article, and that is going to be in the feminine. I know it's feminine because of the noon there, or the eta there. It's going to be in the accusative, okay, because of the noon. Its number is singular, and its lexical form is going to be, and because I'm talking about feminine, this is the lexical form. Hey, because it's feminine, I'm going to see when I look at the lexicon, look at the dictionary, it's going to put in the lexical form is going to be the nominative singular form in the dictionary. That's how you look it up. And it's inflected meaning how, what does it mean? It means the, regardless, it just means the. Now, obviously, depending on what word it modifies, the what? Basileos, So here we have in the feminine again, and we have in the, I believe this is plural, and let's see, that would have to be in the accusative. Well, it could be, hold on, it could be nominative or accusative, right? So let me go back to our, that's where, so this nominative or accusative, if I look at, then what am I looking at? Basileos? No, it has to only be accusative plural. That's it. Okay, accusative plural. Its lexical form is, I'm going to spell the whole thing out. It's going to be basile. I think that's what an alpha ending. I have to look it up in the dictionary or in the lexicon. Alpha ending. No case ending for the nominative singular. And it means king, not kingdom, but kingdoms in the plural. Same with on down the line. That oi here is in the nominative plural. It's nominative plural. That's our ending here, and we're going to say it's the masculine because I know it's masculine. Well, it's theos. It's from theos, and of course it means gods, plural. And then ta, and they're telling us 2 times. Ta can be in the nominative or accusative, in the singular, neuter. So it could be either one of those, a nominative or accusative in the singular neuter, and it's from its lexical dictionary. It would actually be ha, hey, ta, right? And it means the, regardless of whether it's accusative or nominative, it means the. Inflected meaning. Lagus, there's my plural accusative ending, plural, and it's going to be masculine. This is a first declension word, M-A-S-C, masculine. It's in my omicron with the us ending. Its lexical form is nominative singular, and so it's going to be logos. That's the lexical form. Excuse me. And in this case, its inflected meaning means words. Okay, so it means words in the plural, but it's in the accusative, so it's going to function as the direct object, not as the subject. Kairoi, there's my nominative plural ending. It is a masculine word because of the oi, and the oi is plural, not masculine word, and it would be kai ros, and refers to time. I'll look that up, see if I got that right. I'm a little bit leery on some of that. Hold on a minute. Vocabulary kairos. Yeah, that is correct. Okay, it is a, yeah, I wanted to make sure there was something else. Okay, toss. Here's our, I think, a accusative, plural, neuter, from ta, actually, ha, ha, hey, ta. Yeah, ta would be the singular form, with the omicron, ta in the plural form with the alpha ending, and meaning the again. And let's make sure I got that right too, because sometimes I just question myself. I believe that is correct. I do think that's correct. Toss. That is a feminine. Did I say it's neuter? That is a feminine word. So there's something I knew might be wrong. That is a feminine word, and not a neuter. Yeah, that's correct. So it's from hey, ha, hey, ta, meaning the in the feminine. Christon, there is an accusative because the noon is masculine, it is singular, it is masculine ASC, and it is from Christos. Make that change like that. Okay. Chris, oh, we'll come back to black. Okay. Probably should have looked at that way. Christos, and it means, of course, Christ. That's how you would do this, basically. So you're looking at the inflected form. So you want to get its inflected meaning. Meaning how, what does it mean in its usage in the text itself. But you also want to know its case. So far all we've done is accusative and nominative, a nominative and accusative. Its number, singular or plural, its gender, masculine, feminine, or neuter, and its lexical form, which is the dictionary form. So how would you look it up? Well, it's always going to be nominative, singular. Say always. There are exceptions. Nominative singular is how, if it does exist, will be in the lexical form. And so you want to know what the lexical form is. That's the reason these vocabulary words are all in the lexical form, nominative singular, because that's how you look it up in the nominative singular form. Okay? And then I think that's it. I won't go through all this other stuff. That's for something later. Okay, so hopefully that's not too confusing. I knew this would take a little time. I'm not even sure how much time we spent, but I wanted you to sort of I wanted to sort of run through this. It would have been better if we could do this together, but for time's sake, I wanted to get this to you. So if you can go through this, take your time, and then when next time we get back together, we'll answer any questions and update and go through anything. You will have the homework from chapter 6 and the quiz from chapter 6. Also from chapter 4, we've already done chapter 3, but chapter 4, which was the syllabification, it's going to be the not pronunciation, but the punctuation and the syllabification. And I know you've been looking at that, but you need to do the homework for chapter 4 and the quiz for chapter 4 and the homework for chapter 6 and the quiz for chapter 6. But we won't meet again until we do chapter 7 after we come back from PTP. So I think we come back on the 23rd. It's Friday, 24th, 25th. So that'd be the 27th. And we'll look at chapter 7, where we'll look at the dative and genitive. So you'll need to go through this on the nominative and accusative beforehand. If you can get me the homework and the quizzes before then, I can get you some feedback. That will make it a little easier when you get to the dative and genitive, and the pieces start to fall into place once we put all that together. So hopefully that helps and not too confusing. By all means, send me a text, a call, or email if you have any questions. And I appreciate. Sorry we didn't get together. I mean, we did, but we just didn't get to finish because of technical reasons. But hopefully this will satisfy the immediate need, and we won't get too far behind. Appreciate you, brother, and we'll close with that. So let me just go ahead and stop share. And I think I can end. Where's let me go ahead and there we go. Now I can end recording. Oh, an hour and 37 minutes for recording. Oh, it's supposed to be an hour and a half class, so it's not too bad. All right.